So it's no secret that in Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links, the most important part of a deck is unironically the skill. The deck itself usually doesn't do anything unless the skill itself is very, very, very powerful. We were streaming on Twitch and people were talking about what the most powerful skills was. People were talking about onomatopoeia. People were talking about, the Tech Genius skill, the new Rose Dragon skill, etc., etc., etc. And it dawned on me that a lot of people didn't really play from the beginning and didn't realize how broken some of the older skills were. Some of the older skills had more powerful effects than the anime skills, but were generic for any deck. So I kind of got to thinking, well, what are the most powerful skills in Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links, at their peak power, right? At their most powerful, how strong was each individual skill kind of in a vacuum, regardless of what decks that they were kind of being built in. And that's what today's video is about. We'll also talk about honorable mentions towards the end before we reveal first place. But I wanted to go over what I believe are the top 10 most powerful skills we've ever seen. Starting off with balance. Balance at full power was insane. I'm talking about the balance where you didn't need to run any trap cards or spells or whatever. It was just whatever cards you put into your deck, that's how it would reflect. So if you had a deck that was all monsters and spell cards, you would get a balanced hand that was balanced between monsters and spells depending on how many you ended up putting into your deck. I believe the same formula as even nerfed balance with the traps being added as well, but without having to play traps in your deck, which obviously makes it extremely powerful because, back in the day you could play something like Noble Knights, for example, and, only play your monsters and your spells and not deal with traps whatsoever, making your deck hyper consistent. Obviously, a skill like this can never exist in today's world because any deck, if you just gave generic, no restrictions, just immediate, you never brick, would be extremely powerful. And kind of why we put it here, kind of on the lower scale, because there's a lot of more crazy consistency skills that we're about to get into. Number 9, we have Restart. A lot of people don't know this, but Restart used to literally just be like other card games where you just send your hand back and draw a new hand. That's what Restart used to be in Duel Links. There was no cost, there was no skip your turn, wait, whatever. You didn't have to do any of that. Literally, you just boom. Duel starts, I hit Restart. I don't like my opening hand, restart the hand. No downside whatsoever. Extremely, extremely powerful skill back in the day. We have Switcheroo coming up as well. Switcheroo was even more powerful because you got to do a little something spicy with Switcheroo. With Switcheroo, you were able to play something like Thunder Dragon, right? You would use Thunder Dragon's effect to add 2 Thunder Dragons to your hand. You would use Switcheroo, send a Thunder Dragon back into your deck, draw a random card, and then use Thunder Dragon's effect again. There was no restriction. There was no life point cost. There was nothing. You just got to go plus for free by just running the skill. It was insanely broken during the relinquished meta, and I absolutely loved abusing it with Thunder Dragons, as did many decks at the time. So it was very, very, very swiftly nerfed to be once per turn. Can't use both charges right away. And of course, later on, putting on more restrictions, life point cost, etc., etc. Next up, we have Spell Specialist and all the variants of Spell Specialist. My monster cards, the trap variant, I forget what it is. No one really used that one. But this skill got shadow buffed at one point, and basically Spell Specialist was the most used one because you could guarantee like grass is greener in your hand, or my monster cards could, almost guarantee like Elder Canahawk turn 1 with Ritual Beast or some crazy shenanigans like that. When this skill got shadow buffed, everyone started running that skill because it was very powerful. Again, hyper consistent, and very easily you would open up a mill card. So a lot of 30 card strategies were born during this era. This is when Tier 0 Grass Shiranui was a thing, thus making Element Sabers come into rise again as 30 card decks. And ultimately, when this got nerfed, so did Grass. Grass got limited to 1, and then eventually forbidden in the game. And a lot of it is thanks to Spell Specialist. Next up, we have Light and Dark. Light and Dark is pretty much the original Automato play, but was generic to any Light and Dark. And why this was so powerful when it first came out is we didn't realize that you could just select whatever card you wanted. You send back a Light monster, you can add back any Dark monster as long as it fills the level requirement that you needed, as long as the same level and the opposite attribute. And this was extremely crazy to us because, you know, we were used to returning and drawing a random card, but being able to search for a specific card, this is basically our old automato play, because it enabled a lot of different decks like Six Samurais, spell books, even meme decks to play this skill and search so many things in the game that wasn't specific to just automats or just Tech Genius or whatever the situation may be. So this helped a lot of different decks be super, super hyper consistent. We also have 3-star demotion. I put 3-star demotion above this because 3-star demotion came out during a meta where it wasn't very easy to summon big boy boss monsters. And this skill made you very easily be able to summon those big boy boss monsters and combo it with counter traps, you know, to stop people from playing the game. You were able to just create really toxic boards with really no downside whatsoever. And it really changed Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links back in the day, because this was the first time where we had a skill that was just change. Like, it just felt like if you're not running this skill, like you're griefing, you know, you're not playing the game appropriately. And the best way to play Duel Links was to try and abuse this skill in ways to actually properly play the game. Basically, let you summon high level monsters. It reduces their star level by 3. So if you can bring that star level down to 4 or below, you essentially get to summon the monster for free. And so you can imagine normal summoning a lot of high level monsters in a very low powered game really, really broke the game back in the day. Next up, we have Beatdown. Beatdown may be a surprise to most people, but Beatdown essentially took away the stat blocks for most cards in game in Duel Links when it was first released for many reasons. Well, first of all, it wasn't once per duel like it is now. And second of all, it wasn't just to high-level monsters. As long as you had a high-level monster on the field, it gave the attack boost to everyone on your board. So this became a huge problem, especially during the for hire meta, where for hire would have 1 high level monster and 2 low level monsters, but they would still get the attack boost. And this was especially annoying in the mirror match because, you know, you could never wall off your opponent. You didn't ever have to play smart with your cards. If it was your turn, you would beat over your opponent's monsters, regardless of what monsters they were. So it never really mattered. And yeah, just they eventually had to nerf Beatdown along the Dark Lord meta, because Dark Lords were even, you know, they were just unstoppable. And finally, when Beatdown was nerfed, they were able to be stopped by Blue Eyes, just walling them off with attack points. And attack and defense is such a huge core part of Yu-Gi-Oh! Just negating that and not having that be part of the game when it's your turn was extremely broken back in the day. Next up, we have Masked Tribute. This skill was insane. Basically, you would send a card from your hand back into the deck, and you would summon a free level 4 monster. That's pretty much it. You can't respond to it. It was really broken during the Subterror meta because they would have the Subterror Warrior and then just a free monster that they can use for the Subterror Warrior's effect. And on top of that, you know, people were using this for just free enemy controller, for free monsters to attack with. You know, people were using it to switch control with monster seizure, etc., etc., etc. And of course, we all know if this skill just stayed the same way it was, it'd be insanely broken in Synchro and in XC's era, especially in XC's era, where you can just make a level 4 for free for no reason. Just every deck can get an additional special summon by returning 1 card in the hand is very, very powerful, you know, with XC's and links and all that. So it was a skill that we knew would be eventually gone, but it was very, very fun to play with, essentially just being able to summon a free monster for not really doing a whole lot. Next up, we have Cyber Style. The original Cyber Style just summoned a whole bunch of proto cyber dragons to your field based on how many life points you were missing. That was it. You could do whatever you want with them after that. So, you know, you could have up to 3 if you were missing the 3,000 life point requirement. So a lot of decks, you know, they started playing Cosmics and stuff just to get free monsters on the board. They used them for tribute summoning, for econs, for fusion. You know, if the skill was still around, for link summoning, for XCs, for synchro, you could do whatever you wanted with them back in the day. And so many decks just picked it up just so they could tribute summon, just so they could econ take, just so they can, you know, whatever you wanted to do, Cyber Style was there for you as long as you were able to give up life points, which a lot of decks could, you know, with Cosmic and whatnot. Very insanely powerful skill, and was greatly used back in the day and would still be used if it was fully unlimited. Now for some honorable mentions, here are all of the honorable mentions that I did not include for various reasons. We'll go through them very quickly. D-Draw, the only really broken thing of D-Draw was way back in the day. You could see your entire deck list and in what order you would draw your deck when you went to go D-Draw. So if you just took some time and, screenshotted or wrote down what you were drawing next, you would know exactly what you would draw in what order unless you shuffled your deck. That's really the only broken thing that was with that deck. Endless Trap Hell. Endless Trap Hell was annoying because it returned a bunch of traps to your deck and added one trap to your hand. And while this is annoying, I think it's more of a nuisance factor rather than just a broken skill factor, and was nerfed more because this is just a pain to play with against in ladder. I don't, 20, 50-minute games for just to play against a stall deck. I don't really think competitively it was just a crazy, crazy skill. Titan Showdown was pretty nuts. If your life points were lower than your opponent, you would deal double, life point damage. I believe you had to be at least 2,000 or below for it to work. This got nerfed because it was in cheese decks like, Evil Eye and stuff like that, where they just cheese you with, Nightmare Shark or something like that. On its own, it wasn't extremely powerful. If you knew it was coming, it was okay, but it was more funny than anything to see people lose to it. Three Gods Pillar. This put the Three Gods pillar cards at the bottom of your deck, 3 of them, which essentially made you run a 17-card deck, right? Because they always spawned at the bottom, which means you would not draw them unless you shuffled your deck. Essentially, starting your opening hand would start from a 17-card deck instead of a 20-card deck. Insanely broken skill. It got nerfed almost immediately, though. No one got a chance to abuse it. Otherwise, it definitely would have made the top 10 if people actually got to abuse it. They changed it so it was random. Didn't matter anymore. Dual Standby. Dual Standby was broken in a lot of different strategies, but I feel like most of the strategies came down to the cards themselves, not so much the skill. The only time you could really say the skill was stupid is when it kept Amano Iwado on the board, which was really, really silly. But other than that, it was mostly the cards themselves, not really the skill that broke it. Automato Play and all its variants are extremely powerful. We all know this, but I do believe that Automato Play is just simply a more restricted version of all of the older consistency skills: Restart, Balance, Switcheroo, Spell Specialist, Light and Dark. All those were extremely more powerful than Automato Play because they could essentially accomplish the same thing, but without any other restrictions. So all of Automato Play, Tech Genuses, Flight Control, Black Rose, all of those, they have restrictions, kind of making them less generic than the generic skills, and the generic skills could do the same thing at full power. So honorable mention for them. Parasite Infestation, kind of the same thing with Dual Standby. It was used in a bunch of stall decks. Parasite Infestation, honestly, the most annoying part is it would change your monsters into insects, which could really fuck with your strategy. But the burn damage obviously was super annoying, and all that was super annoying. And it was very powerful, but it was used a lot because it was cheap. It wasn't really necessarily the best strategy. A lot of people preferred extra, for example, when they played their stall decks back in competitive tournaments, as competitive as you could anyway. Last Gamble. Last Gamble is one of those where I was like, maybe I should put on the list, but maybe not. Obviously, today, Last Gamble would be broken at full power, but, even back then, it was very, very strong. The problem with Last Gamble is it was inconsistent, right? You can just draw a 1 and you just draw 1, you roll a 1 and you draw 1 and you just end up losing. So if it was a little bit more consistent, sure, but I think the consistency of the skill doesn't really put it on the top 10. Great meme potential though. I love Last Gamble. Chain Reaction, I only put Chain Reaction on here because it was literally bugged for a Casey Cup, and if you flipped it, you caused cards to miss timing. Most notably, you could make the Ancient Gears miss timing on their Gear Town, and they would not be able to summon their AG monsters when it got destroyed. So there you go. I don't know why that was allowed. And then finally, Grit. Grit used to activate on any life points during that turn, so it could trigger multiple times in a turn as well. So if you get dropped to 1 life point, there was still a percentile chance that if they swing into you again, Grit would just activate again and you wouldn't die. It just, every time you took lethal damage, there was a chance that it activated, and the higher your life points originally, that's how it was supposed to do. The higher your life points, the more chance that you live. The lower, the less chance you live. But unfortunately, even at lower ends, it was still extremely, extremely crazy. I once saw a guy go from 100 life points to 1, Grit activated, swing again, Grit activated again, and I was like, what are the chances? and then he died on the next attack. And I was like, wow. Imagine losing because it procced too many times in a row. And now for number 1, KC Bling. KC Bling, a lot of you might be scratching your head because you're like, I don't really remember this skill being that powerful. That's because not a lot of people used this skill. KC Bling essentially made it so you could guarantee your next draw be a prismatic or a glossy when they changed it. And this is extremely powerful because it makes the game essentially pay to win before they ended up changing the skill outright, so you can't make it pay to win anymore. Most notably, Kawaki Miru did this with the cores, Iron Core of Kawaki Miru. They just got a whole bunch of glossies, a whole bunch of prismatics to activate this skill, guaranteeing them the draw and usually sacking their opponent on that turn. We've also seen vampires use this, and we've seen Dark Lords use this to great effect. While I'm sure the Book of Moon selection box or the Blue Eye structure deck have made Konami more overall money, in terms of singular purchases, KC Bling has probably made the most per person, comparative to how much a person would spend to get Book of Moon or whatever. Because back then you couldn't guarantee prismatics. You couldn't change cards into prismatics by buying selections or anything like that. You just had to keep buying structure decks, keep buying boxes. So people would keep buying the Dark Lord banishment box to get at least one prismatic banishment. People would keep buying the Kawaki Miru Iron Cores just to try and get at least a prismatic and a glossy core, because it would always work where it would draw your prismatic first and then your glossy second and then a normal after that if you didn't use it. You could keep using it every single turn. They added a life point restriction to it, but it was only 1,000, so it wasn't even that terrible. You could still use it quite effectively. And yeah, this was the most pay-to-win and broken skill in the game, and a lot of people did not have access to it because, let's be honest, no one's gonna dump, $500, $600, $700 to get one prismatic card, and then even more, thousands of dollars to get a play set of prismatic cards. That would be absolute insanity. But players who had KC Bling were very sought after, especially in the team-based leagues where they were doing like Team Wars and Clan Wars. People went after these players like crazy because they had such a huge advantage by having access to a full-powered KC Bling deck. So easily, in my book, the most broken skill we've ever had. Literally made the game pay to win, more pay to win than, like, right now it's more like pay for convenience, pay so you don't have to grind, right? But there was no defending this. This was pay to win to the max. There was no getting your prismatics just through free to play grind. It was just not going to happen. I'm sorry. Those are my picks for the top 10 most broken skills and all the honorable mentions. I'm sure there's plenty that I am not thinking of or have missed. So feel free to leave a comment down below. Tell me what you think are the most broken. What is the most insane skills we've ever had in this game. It could, I've played this game since the beginning, so maybe I have a different perspective than a lot of people who played it more recently. Let me know down in the comments below if you agree or disagree. I love you guys. Till the next video. Peace out.